Have you ever looked back at your relationships and thought, wait a second, why do I keep ending up here? Different man, different circumstances, but somehow that same feeling, the same dynamic, and once again, the same disappointment. If this sounds familiar, I want you to know something before I go on. You and your picker are not broken. You are not unlucky, and you are not someone with bad taste in men. I used to think the same thing. You might just be running an unconscious pattern when it comes to choosing men. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I want to share with you a little bit about the path that led me to understanding my own pattern because it didn't start with dating. It started way earlier than that. I grew up with a plan. My parents had my life all planned out for me. Graduate from college, become a professional musician, marry a nice Jewish doctor or lawyer. That was the path. And for a while, I was on the path. I was a flute major. And what that looked like, because it matters to this story, was spending hours every day in a practice room, rehearsing by myself, doing what I was supposed to do. And then the summer after my freshman year of college, I got a job as a waitress, now called a food server. And every day, every single day that I walked into that restaurant, it was a Mexican restaurant called El Torito. I felt something I had not felt in that practice room. I felt alive. I was around people, and I am a people person. I always have been. And something clicked when I was there. So I dropped out of college. I fell in love with the restaurant business and everything about it, the energy, the people, even the hours. And I disappointed my parents. I ended up going to school for food service management, and that decision changed everything, including who I met and who I fell in love with. Met both of my ex husbands when I was in the restaurant business. They came from very different backgrounds than I had grown up in, both from areas in Mexico where life was genuinely hard. And in some ways, I thought I could make their lives better by being with them, that I could help, I could save them. This was all subconscious at the time, before therapy and knowing that I was a fixer. But I want to be really clear first that I did love both of my ex husbands. They were good people, and I have absolutely no regrets, especially because my children are the best decision and the best gift that came from those marriages, along with something that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But if I'm being honest about the pattern, and this video is always about being honest, part of what drew me to those relationships was something that had nothing to do with them and everything to do with me. I had disappointed my parents. I had walked away from the plan. And somewhere underneath all of it, my self worth had taken a huge hit. I didn't feel like I deserved the doctor or the lawyer. I didn't feel like I deserved somebody who could take care of me or take me on vacation or build financial security. We were always living check to check. And on some level, I think I believed that that was what I deserved. I hate the phrase beneath me because I truly don't believe I'm any better than anybody else. And if you know me at all, you know that that's true about me. But the truth is that I was choosing men at a level that matched how I felt about myself at the time, not how I actually was, but how I felt. That was the pattern for me. And it took me a really long time to see it. Here's what's interesting, though, and what I think a lot of you might recognize. After my second divorce, I didn't repeat the exact same pattern. The men I dated were all very different from each other and from my ex husbands. So on the surface, it didn't look like a pattern at all, especially physically. Although for a while, I definitely leaned towards men with darker skin. But underneath, I was still settling, not for the same type of man, but for the behavior I didn't actually want. Lying, being put on the back burner, men who weren't good communicators, accepting less than I deserved, and calling it enough. I also had a habit of breaking my own rules, which was pretty common back then. I had told myself after dating a few men with young children that I wasn't going to do that anymore. By the time my son went to college, I had spent a long time raising my kids on my own, so I was done. I didn't want to start over with somebody who still had many years of parenting ahead. And yes, I know parenting never ends, but you know what I'm talking about. But I met this guy, super sweet, really nice, and I went out with him anyway because he was so nice, even though he had a 3-year old. And yes, he was in his 50s. When he called to confirm our second date, I was driving home from work and I heard Barney music in the background, which was my oldest's favorite show at the time when she was little. My entire body reacted, and I mean instantly. I literally shuddered. And before my brain had even formed a thought, I knew I couldn't do this. Not because anything was wrong with him, he was great, but because I had told myself that I was looking for and needed, and then I ignored it. Again, not the first time. And that's a pattern too. Not just who you choose, but whether you keep the promises that you make to yourself about what you're going to and not accept. Now, recognizing my pattern didn't happen in one dramatic moment. I didn't wake up one day and I was done. I wish it was. It was gradual, built slowly through the work that I was doing. The work I was doing with the seminar I was involved in was really where it started to crystallize because that environment doesn't let you off the hook. You can't just talk about the surface shit. You have to look underneath. And when I started to look honestly at all that stuff, at why I kept making certain choices, at what I was really afraid of, at what I actually believed about what I deserved, the pattern became impossible to ignore. When I finally saw it clearly, I felt two things. One, embarrassment, because I had been doing this for years without seeing it, because I was a very smart, capable woman, and I had somehow not connected the dots. I also felt relief, huge relief, because once you can see the pattern, you can actually do something about it. You're not just unlucky anymore. You're not cursed. You have information, and information is power. I didn't feel grief because I genuinely don't regret my choices. My 2 marriages gave me my children, like I said. My dating years gave me the gift of learning how to love myself. And that, learning to love myself, turned out to be the most important thing that came out of all of it because it's what made everything else possible. So, why does this happen? Why do smart, self aware women keep ending up in the same kind of relationship? Well, here's what I know. And it's one of the things that we're going to be talking about in the Becoming Her Sisterhood, my new program that starts next month. But we are wired to look for what's familiar, not what's healthy, what's familiar. Our nervous system is always looking for what it already knows because familiarity feels safe even when it's not. Even when familiar means chaos or emotional unavailability or someone who needs saving or someone who will put you on the back burner. If you grew up in an environment where love felt like a certain thing, whether it was earning attention or making yourself smaller or managing somebody else's emotions or proving your worth, your nervous system learned this is what love looks like. And it's going to keep you seeking that out on autopilot until you consciously decide to look at it. And here's the piece that I think is most important for women over 50 specifically. Our patterns are almost always connected to how we felt about ourselves at the time we formed them, not who we actually are, how we felt, the version of us that believed we weren't enough, or had made too many mistakes already, or had too much baggage, or had already used up our chances. That version of you made choices that matched her self worth. And until your self worth changes, And I mean really changes, not just intellectually in your head, but deep down in your bones, the pattern tends to follow. And I want to make a distinction that I think is really important here because it comes up a lot when we're talking about dating, and almost nobody talks about it. There is a difference between genuine chemistry and the pull of familiarity, and they can feel almost identical. Genuine chemistry is about genuine chemistry is about who someone actually is, their character, their energy, the way they make you feel when you're around them. It grows as you get to know them. Familiarity is your nervous system recognizing a pattern it already knows. It's that instant, I feel like I've known him forever feeling, which sounds romantic, lots of movies, but it's actually your brain saying, this feels like what I already know. The problem is that when you already know it isn't healthy, familiarity pulls you towards more of the same thing. The man who feels instantly comfortable because he fits the pattern, not because he's the right person. This is why it's important to go slow and why doing the inner work is not optional. Because until you change what's familiar to you, until safety and consistency and genuine care start to feel like home, your nervous system is going to keep gravitating towards what it already knows. The goal isn't to stop trusting your feelings. It's to make sure your feelings are calibrated to something healthy. Breaking a pattern doesn't look the way you might think because it's not a switch you can flip on and off. It's slow. It's uncomfortable. It requires you to look at things you'd rather not look at, to sit with the embarrassment of seeing your own choices clearly, to grieve maybe the time you spent in the patterns that didn't serve you. Everybody's different. For me, it looked like therapy, real therapy, where I was actually honest. It looked like personal development work that held me accountable. It looked like slowly, gradually building my self-worth to match who I actually was instead of who I felt like after disappointing my parents and walking away from the plan. It also looked like one day realizing I deserve someone who can take me on vacation. I deserve financial stability. I deserve someone who shows up, not because I'm better than anybody else, but because I'm worth it. And so are you. The pattern doesn't end dramatically. It ends quietly, like in the moment you make a different choice, and then another one, and then another one after that, until one day you look around and you realize you're not in the pattern anymore. You are not doomed to repeat this, but you do have to be willing to look at it honestly, without shame, and without beating yourself up for the choices that you made before you knew better. Because just like we say with parenting, right? We were doing the best we could with the tools we had. The same thing applies here. You made those choices with who you were at the time, and who you were at the time was doing the best she could. The pattern ends the minute you see it clearly. And if you're watching this video, you are clearly already doing that. Next week, we're going to go deeper into one of the most common patterns that I see in strong women, which is overfunctioning, doing everything, initiating it all, keeping everything going, and then wondering why he never tries as hard as you do. If that sounds familiar, make sure you're subscribed. Type guide in the comments for my free guide, 5 Lies Women Over 50 Believe About Love and the Truth That Changes Everything. And the wait list for the Becoming Her Sisterhood is also in the comments. I'd love to have you there. If this video helped you at all, please subscribe because every week on this channel, we talk about real love, real growth, and what it takes to create the relationship you deserve. Because the best relationship starts with you. I'll see you next week.